So, Darshana, thank you so much for being with me today.
I am delighted, Jessa.
Could you start just telling us a little bit about why this is your passion? What got you into this work? Why does it matter to you?
I found my way here through my own personal explorations. It surprises people to find out that once upon a time I had like a corporate career and a very different life. And now I'm like, on Netflix stroking people's genitals and whatnot. And it's like, what? But I got here through my own personal exploration. I was married in my early 20s, and when my marriage ended, I started dating and relating with different people, having different sexual experiences, and that was an area of my life that was getting really lit up. What was also happening at that time is I was deep on my spiritual path, also really lighting me up. And yet those two things felt very separate from each other.
Mm.
And so the origin of my work is that I wanted some integration personally between sexuality and spirituality and really just all of myself and all of life. Like my body of work is erotic wholeness. And I could look back in hindsight and say that those two things, eroticism and wholeness, have been recurring themes for a very, very, very long time. And so at a certain point, I got clear that the corporate career was not for me. A lot of the trappings of that life looks good on the outside but isn't feeling good on the inside was my reality. And so I made some big changes and took a big leap in the direction of the path that now has led me to being in private practice for over a decade, supporting people, in the most intimate terrain of their lives. And been a pretty wild ride. That's
Yeah.
the very
Okay.
condensed version.
And I mean, maybe it seems self-explanatory, but do you have a definition of erotic wholeness? Or
I
maybe, okay,
do.
let's,
And
good.
it's not self-explanatory. And
All
and and
right.
I love to get to talk about it because a lot of us hear the word erotic, and I've heard people say everything from like, oh, that must mean porn, as in erotica, or it means like a very sensationalized expression of sexuality. And the definition that I use of eroticism is far more similar to life force energy than it is to sexual energy in particular. So it's our vitality, it's our
Mm,
aliveness, it's what animates us. And that includes anything we're passionate about. So you can channel erotic energy into your sexuality. You could just as readily channel it into your creativity, into your activism, into the way you tend relationships, and not just romantic and intimate relationships, but any relationships. So eroticism really is life force.
okay.
Wholeness, the reason I like to speak about that is we exist in a world and a culture that loves to have us believe we are all manner of broken. Like that makes everything a personal failing. And it's really it's like it breaks my heart when I really feel into how many of us walk around with this sense of something is wrong with me. When my belief is there's nothing that is fundamentally broken or intrinsically wrong so much as there's a lot of fragmentation. There's a lot of disconnection. There's a lot of wearing masks and playing parts that goes on as opposed to knowing who we really and truly are. And so to do the work of growing ourselves whole, if that's what wholeness is about, is getting to know all of those parts and
Mm,
integrating them in a cohesive way, having a feeling of being holistically ourselves. And I think many of us seek that when we're on healing paths, even if your wording around it might be different from my own.
right, right.
Certainly this tracks with many other therapeutic modalities and schools of thoughts. I'm influenced pretty heavily by internal family systems, for instance,
Right.
IFS, which is about parts work. So yeah, wholeness is a nod to the way that when we really get to know and integrate all the parts of ourselves, we also become more empowered in our choice to say, what parts do I want to lead with? What parts have beliefs or behaviors that maybe don't align for me anymore? Perhaps they served me once upon a time, but it's not really cutting it any longer. It's not getting me where I want to go. And so we can be at choice about how we lead.
Yeah. It also seems like what part of me do I want to lead with here and now in this
Yeah,
situation versus that situation, right? If
totally.
we, yeah.
Yeah, there is room for choice and subjectivity. I mean, in the IFS model, I won't go too far down that
Right,
rabbit hole.
right.
But there is they speak about self-led energy, which would kind of, we can liken that to our wholeness, our most integrated resource self. And I think stepping aside from that model, maybe this is a little bit of what you're speaking to. It's like there are times we want to bring our playfulness and our levity forward because the circumstances really align with that. The person or people we're relating with, it makes sense. Other times we lead with our intellect. Other times we might be a little more serious and self-possessed. That doesn't mean we are not being our true selves necessarily,
Right.
but the difference is who's choosing what part comes to the forefront. A lot of times we're not in as empowered of a choice making as we think we are. We're
Mm,
running these behaviors and these patterns, the scripts that they run are kind of happening in the background, and we don't even discern that there might be another option. So we're here today to talk about people pleasing.
right, right.
That's one, it's a good segue, so I'm bringing it in. It's like people pleasing is one such way where some of the markers of people pleasing, it could look like extensive kindness. And we might say to ourselves, well, is it a bad thing to be kind? It's not. But if you don't really feel kind and that's a mask that you're wearing,
Right.
right? Or if really what's going on is that you don't feel safe to have a contrary opinion or express that you don't agree with something or like something because you're fearful of rocking the boat. Another way that people pleasing shows up is a lot of like perfectionistic controlling energy for some people because we
Mm,
believe that there's some objective set of standards that have to be met, and the only way we're going to be okay and safe is if everything is all tidy and in order. So it may not be that you're trying to please the person right in front of you, but there's a standard, some that you're living your life, measuring against, that is blocking authenticity. And this shows up a lot in intimate partnerships. So it's a concept or a topic that I get to do a lot of coaching around in my.
yeah. So, what are the kinds of things where this first comes to somebody's attention? Like you're describing some of these scenarios, but like, what are the kinds of things people are thinking to themselves or saying, or is going to, I don't know, break through somebody's awareness? Like maybe I'm not honoring myself here, or showing up with my wholeness.
Where this comes up a lot in terms of a sexual intimate partnership, especially if it's a longer term relationship where many of us, if we're in a longer term connection, are going to find ourselves in certain rhythms, routines. It's like, okay, we do this, we do that, this day, that thing, or our sex goes like this. But what happens for most of my clients, the thing that I hear often, and I think you and I support some of the same people in by which I mean I have a lot of clients who are in otherwise great relationships,
Yeah.
or so they would say. We're really good partners, we're really good friends, we parent well together, we have fun together. And yet something's going on here in our sex lives. And the most common thing is that particularly in a heterosexual dynamic, the woman will say to me, I have no idea what I like.
Yeah.
I actually believe my partner when they say they want to know, like they would like me to tell them. But the problem is, I don't know. And the reason why you don't know is people pleasing.
Mm,
Because if you're born as a girl and acculturated as such, and you live your life and are sexualized in that way, implicitly and explicitly, what we are taught is that we are objects of another person's pleasure. And that, again, this is, our heterosexual norms, is that the man leads, initiates, is more of the doer, and to the extent that we are, as a woman in this equation, we're doing it to please them.
mm,
So, nowhere in that basic script about how sex goes is a girl or a woman experiencing sex for herself. Nowhere is she at the center of her own experience, learning these are the things that really feel good to me. This is the pace that I want to move at. Here's how I like to express my erotic energy. It's very much, I'm going to go along with what my male partner's lead is. I'm going to try to meet their needs, even preempt their needs if they haven't been expressly like loud about them. But then we also have a dynamic that shows up a lot where many men feel entitled to their woman partner's sexuality and sexual energy. And so it's like, yeah, like go down on me, like that's what I want. And she's like, what's in it for me? Now, here's the thing, some women, and I'm one of them, absolutely love performing oral on their partners.
Right,
Like
right.
there's not an objective like this is a good, this is a bad, you should or should not like this. The inquiry here and the invitation is, what would it take to get to know what does it for you?
Yeah.
And
And
that's where many people start.
my brain is going in so many different directions because I'm picturing all the clients over 15 years now. And I would agree. Some people have treated sex like that from the very beginning. It's, some women that I've never thought about it for me. It was always for my partner. I don't even know what I want. But there are certainly people in other parts of the spectrum that totally know what they want, but maybe don't feel like they can take up the space, or they give up too easy, or there isn't the environment in which to really make that a priority. And then, of course, we've got people where they used to know what they want, really enjoy, but it's changed now. I
Yes,
mean, there's like a whole, it's a whole
100%.
spectrum of challenges here.
Yes, and you just brought in two other very valid scenarios, which is that, there's a lot of us might have a sense of the thing that really turns us on or the thing that we want to experience. Maybe it's born out of pure curiosity. Maybe it's like a solid knowing of like, oh, this is what I find hot. But it could be a question of whether or not that aligns with the norms of the quote unquote right way to have sex, the good way to be sexual, because there's a ton of shaming, stigma. This is taboo, that is not. And very little of this is an objective truth. Much of it is subjective. So
Right.
it's to say that, what turns one person on, as long as they're engaging with that desire in a consensual way where nobody is getting harmed unless they ask to be, because some
Right.
people are into that.
Yeah.
Like there's no there nowhere is there a law written that says this is the good kind of sex, this is the bad kind.
Right. Right.
What matters is, do you get a chance to say, here's what I'm interested in? A lot of us are afraid that if we reveal that, I mean, it's a very vulnerable thing to own desires. Like if we reveal our desire to a partner and they aren't into what we're into, that they're going to think differently about us, that they're going to turn away from us. This too is people pleasing, because what
Right.
people pleasing has us do is suppress ourselves to stay in connection with another.
Yeah.
That's a very basic definition of it, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
means that rather than me risk the vulnerable edge of saying like, hey, I really want to try anal, and what if my partner thinks that that's really gross or weird? Like, we don't say anything about it, and we keep showing up having P and V sex despite knowing that we want a different experience. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
off the cuff example.
Yeah. Or even just, I've had so many people tell me I take too long. They feel somewhat uncomfortable or selfish, or like they're imposing on a partner to sort of say, hey, I need 15 minutes of this or something,
Right, which is
whatever.
such a common experience. And that's because, I mean, and this is true of the wider medical world, not just sexually speaking. Everything we know about bodies is rooted in a standard that is male bodied.
Right.
Male bodies and female bodies are different bodies. It is
Yeah.
not a superior inferior thing. It is different. And in terms of the anatomy of our arousal, so I want to like introduce that concept. Most of us, to the extent that we got any degree of sex education, we learned about reproductive anatomy and how to not get pregnant.
Right. And
Nowadays,
STIs. Right.
that's newer. That's newer.
Oh,
Seriously. Like, learning about sexual health, that was not happening decades back in a significant way. So even that is a step up. But what is still largely absent is pleasure and
yeah.
consent
And
and what
communication.
and
Yeah.
communication and intimacy, which are the things that we really need to learn. And that's why so many couples who are doing great in a million other ways, or maybe struggling in other ways too, like don't really know how to have mutually satisfying sex because they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to center pleasure in a mutual way. And we're following these scripts. And when I say that, I mean, maybe somebody handed you a piece of paper with a script on it, but I'm evoking that term metaphorically because it
Right.
I really want you to think about that though. Like, what is the script of your sexuality? A kiss here, a touch there, boom, boom, boom. And then, yeah, to use the example that you're speaking about, like this idea and that women take longer, female bodies take longer, is rooted in scientific reality.
Right.
But we carry shame around it, or we feel that we are being a burden, or as you said, taking up too much space or asking for too much, when the reality is we're just asking to be met.
Right.
It's not more than that. We're asking to be attuned to, for our body to be listened to, touched, invited into this experience at the pace that works for us. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. And if we're, again, I'm going to stay with this heteronormative dynamic, it's not only that like the woman's issue and not the man's, or vice versa.
Right.
Both
Right.
have an opportunity to say, oh, we might move at some different paces. We might want some different things. Where is the overlap? How do we write a new script together that really is about mutuality and genuine intimacy, and take care of desires and needs in both directions, not just one? Like, this isn't a problem, because fundamentally what you're going to end up with is more sex.
Right.
and,
Exactly.
and, and,
More ways
and
to play.
and arguably better sex. And now, see, more sex may not excite everybody who's listening, because why
Right.
would you want to have more sex that is
Like
already
that. Yeah.
good for you?
Yeah.
But if it's the sex that you like, well, most of us are going to want more of
Yeah.
that.
Well, and it strikes me, it's not just, I mean, in this heterosexual dynamic that we're talking about, it's not just the woman or the people pleaser that's suffering here. The partner is too. I mean, you mentioned sometimes men feel entitled to our sexual attention or energy, but so many of my clients come in, I wish my partner was more active. I wish they would tell me what they wanted. I mean, they really are looking for that mutuality. They want a chance to truly pleasure their partner and
And
can't
I want
get
to
through.
I want to add that I have absolutely worked with couples where the man was the people pleaser.
Yeah.
You know, which is to say, like, that he actually was just lost and confused and saying, okay, I will like basically desexualize myself because it seems like you don't have any room for my sexuality. Like, it's never that there's a just one size fits all
Right.
scenario. Dear
Right.
listener, it's like, if you're not hearing yourself exactly in this, we hold that there are a multitude of
Yes.
realities out there. But yeah, I think when we do speak about what is fundamental for someone who is sexual, because there are asexual people too,
Hmm.
but assuming that it is someone who identifies as being sexual to some extent, most of us want mutuality. Most of us would
Right.
like to feel desire for whoever we're with, and we would like to feel desired by them.
Right.
And so, if that is the hoped for experience, we all have opportunities, whichever gender, whichever role in the dynamic we're playing, like, we all have an opportunity to learn how to represent ourselves more authentically. Your people pleasing can take the form of silence. Your people pleasing can take the form of putting on the mask and going along with the show. Your people pleasing can take the form of suppressing your own energies because you think it's going to overwhelm your partner. Like, it can show up in many different ways. The common denominator there is, if we are in the people pleasing protective strategy, and it is a protective strategy, somehow we believe, a part of us believes, we stay safe this way. We
Right.
get to maintain connection this way. But what's really going on in an otherwise healthy adult relationship is that by people pleasing, you are blocking the possibility of really meeting in a shared intimacy, in the shared vulnerability of two or more humans coming together and relating and saying, like, hey, I like this thing. I want this thing. Do you like this thing? Do you want this thing? Oh, you don't. Dang. Okay, so what are we going to do? How do we get creative here? And that little, like, quick riff that I just gave, it's what happens when disappointment comes into the mix that often derails people.
Right.
We don't have a lot of tolerance for disappointment, generally speaking. And I love people to, like, I love helping people build that tolerance. I love, love, love nothing more than taking two fully formed adults and saying, hey, y'all, you are gonna disappoint each other sometime.
I say this all the time. I mean, disappointment's just a feeling. It's not a foul. It's like I wanted ice cream. I didn't get ice cream. I'm disappointed. It doesn't mean there's been some disaster or some rupture.
But we assign a lot more meaning to disappointment in a
Yeah,
sexual or intimate context. And so think about that. We assign meaning. We
right.
make it mean more than it actually does. We get shame comes into the mix. And if we define shame, thank you, Brene Brown, as like shame is we tell ourselves that we are bad, that we are wrong, that we are broken, or whatever, degenerates. Like, I mean, when it comes to sex, like the shame can spiral deep and dark.
Yes.
And so instead of saying, oh, maybe this behavior, maybe my way of talking about it, like maybe I could finesse that a little bit more. And I could also know that I am not an intrinsically bad, weird person if the other person isn't into what I'm into. There's a there's I'm trying to think of what little euphemism to bring in here. There's so many in my mind right now. One is there's a saying in sex positive communities, don't yuck another person's yum.
Right, right,
Which is to say, like, yeah, like, okay, if you're not into it, fine. You don't have to be into it, but you also don't have to like make another person feel horrible.
right.
That's one thing that applies here. So I learned that lesson before this was my professional life. Back in the old days, I learned that lesson when someone I was dating. I don't, how explicit do we get to be on
Oh,
this?
you can be totally
Right.
explicit. Yeah.
Okay. I like to gauge it accordingly. Okay. So I was dating a guy in my early 30s, and he wanted a golden shower experience, which, if a listener doesn't know what that is, I mean, I'm gonna like it's piss play. And
Right.
some people are into that. And I did not respond well. I did not.
Mm.
I shamed him.
Uh,
Not intentionally, but the way that I received that, my like, oh
you
no.
want what? Yeah.
I led with my yuck. I led
Yeah.
with my ick. Instead of saying what I would say now, and he helped me learn this lesson. And to this day, I'm giving him credit, even though that relationship went off the rails. Um, like he helped me recognize that he had just given me the gift of his vulnerability in that moment.
Yeah.
And instead of me receiving that with care, I shamed him for it. I didn't intend to. I didn't, I am not a horrible person because I did it. But in that moment, I made him feel ashamed when he was bringing me something very vulnerable. So when a partner tells us something about their desires, about their proclivities, the first thing that we can say is, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for opening up to me. Thank you for having the courage to bring your desire to me. I know that that takes a lot. Now, if we're into whatever they're into, we've got one conversation available to us, which is to say, huh, how might we make this?
Right.
How do we orchestrate this? I would love to actually be going down on you for 30 minutes if that's what you need to feel warmed up before intercourse. Like we can do that. What happens if it's not mutually aligned is we get to say, listen, I hear that this is something you really want. And if your answer needs to be whatever your authentic answer is, I am not interested in that, or I'm not so sure how I feel about that. I might need to try it, or I might need it with this caveat or this adjustment. We get to enter into a conversation born of just a lot of curiosity and compassion in all directions. Like, okay, here's where I am, here's where you are. If what we know to be true is that we both desire connection with each other, we both want each other's happiness and fulfillment, let's get creative to figure out what our options are here.
Yeah. Where's the overlap in that Venn diagram, right? And
Exactly.
yeah.
And sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And so that might foster another layer of disappointment. And then you also have options. You can talk about how the person who wants a desire that the other one doesn't, how might they go about fulfilling that with somebody else or in their fantasy life? Or do they make their peace with the fact that this is not going to be part of their reality based on the agreements of their relationship? There's many options, not just a single option. And I
Right.
think most of us default to the only option is to avoid disappointment. And
Right.
and and we're missing out on just so many beautiful opportunities then to really build intimacy with one another and to actually have the depth of fulfillment that we're wanting.
Yeah. Well, and like you're saying, somebody shares their erotic interests with us, say thank you. One thing I'm always telling my students and clients too is if your partner says no, you should also say thank you, right? Thank you for taking care of yourself and not doing something you don't want to be doing because that's not what I want either, right? That's what frees us up to ask for anything or talk about anything is we know our partner will take care of themselves.
And this brings us into then a conversation about consent, which we're not going to get to do justice to today. So, what I'll do is drop a reference here. Go learn about the Wheel of Consent, which is a body of work by Dr. Betty Martin. Please link her in the show notes. Like, she's a gem. She's got a ton of free content out there. It's a foundational element of how I work with my clients. Why I'm bringing this up is because it is not consensual when somebody is enduring or tolerating something only because their partner wants it. It is not consensual when you're unable to really have honest, forthright conversations with clarity about who wants to do what to who, which way, like when we're like, it's not simply saying yes
Right.
without a
Right.
fully informed thing or no. And when we thank somebody for their no, the other thing to know is that it isn't a door slam. No's don't mean done. No's mean not this, now what? If you
Yeah.
can
Or
only
not now, right? Which is another
exactly. Not
possibility.
this,
Right.
not now, not this way, not this unless we can. Like you get to continue to negotiate, to iterate, to pivot. So if, for instance, my partner comes to me and is like, "Babe, like I'm really horny tonight. Like, can I want to have some sexy time?" And I'm like, I'm just not super into that. As much as I love feeling your desire, how do you feel about us exchanging sensual massages tonight? I've got energy for that. Would that be exciting to you? So I didn't take the no, like I'm not like shutting down my partner. And also I'm not stopping at no. I'm saying what I care about is connection. Can we find, as you said, the overlap of the Venn diagram?
Right.
Like
Right. Right.
so many of us hear a no and it's like a door slam. And yeah, what do you do with that? But when the no becomes a pivot, or an invitation to further curiosity and collaboration together of like what might we be able to create that is a mutual yes, we get to keep breathing life into our intimate connection in that way.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening and is recognizing themselves in this conversation that they might have some people pleasing tendencies,
Raise your hand.
behaviors. Yeah, right. And, and
we
maybe
all
not.
we all got some degree of it.
What I mean, what do you suggest? What are the first steps? Like, what do you advise people that are starting to take that on?
I mean, it's going to sound silly when I say it, but it's like the first step to like solving the problem is admitting you have the problem. So it is important to identify your people pleasing tendencies, to see where these behaviors are alive in your life and relationships. And then the thing that keeps us people pleasing, I think it's more of like a two-prong thing, so not just one. It's fear. So we fear that if we are our true selves, if we set the boundary, if we come clean about the fact that we don't actually like the thing we said we like, we acknowledge we've been faking our orgasms, like whatever it is, there's fear that we will lose love, that we will lose connection. So we get to do some work around how to be in relationship with fear. Scarcity is also bound up in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so we have to do some work around that. The other side of the two-prong approach is we also have a responsibility to really learn in a deep, intimate way, who am I authentically? And that includes in a sexual context, how do I like to be sexual? What is my erotic expression? What are the things that I'm interested in? And with that information, armed with that information, how do I cultivate the confidence and the skill to communicate? So tending to the fear, eradicating that, unwinding that, and really learning about what you like, what you don't, boundaries, preference, desire, and the competence to communicate that are the things that need to happen. None of this is rocket science. It's also not to say that it's easy. I
Right.
like
Right.
to misrepresent, but it is simple. Like what we're speaking about here is not like an exceptionally complicated thing. It's that it does take time and it does take effort, and you need coaches, therapists, people who can guide you, because we didn't get here. We did not build up our people pleasing tendencies and all our other stuff that's going on in isolation. That happened in relationship.
Right.
And so it
Right.
stands to reason that we would like to be in relationship in the unwinding of that, both with someone who is a trained professional that can give you some solid guidance, and also so that you get to do this in relationship with your partners, your people, like the people that you are most connected to. Like, you are going to be doing this healing and growing in a relationship with them. And so owning it, like, hey, I'm recognizing that I've been doing some like major people pleasing, that I've got these codependent tendencies, that ooh, like my control issues or my scarcity stuff has been showing up in these ways. Like, coming clean in a way of like vulnerability builds connection can be incredibly liberating and empowering. And anytime that we are courageous enough to be vulnerable with another person, what we're also doing is extending permission and an invitation for their vulnerability.
Right.
And
Right.
that's where intimacy truly, truly takes root.
Yeah.
Vulnerability builds intimacy.
Yeah. And I suppose if you don't get that back, that's
That
important
tells you something.
information. That's important information to have.
It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't mean that the person is intrinsically horrendous and you have to leave them. It might mean, wow, they've got some major work to do. Or it might mean that you're dealing with someone who's not at all interested in or available for that kind of work. I mean
Right.
that has the potential to very much be a litmus test.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
someone, if you're in a relationship with someone who is not caring and compassionate toward your vulnerability, and makes you wrong, mocks you, weaponizes it against you, those would be some red flags.
Right.
In
Right.
an otherwise healthy dynamic, however, you might have a partner who maybe is a bit clumsy at first because they too have not really learned the skills and the capacities that are needed. So you've always got the choice, like, do we want to grow individually and together?
Yeah.
It's an option. Not everyone's going to make that choice, but it is an option.
I'm thinking back to your story about the guy you were dating and the golden showers request, and really cool that he had the wherewithal to come and say, "Hey, I was being vulnerable with you," because plenty of people would receive that and then be down their own shame spiral and really,
Yeah.
could have
I
done
mean,
a lot more damage.
he got pretty pissed at me.
Yeah.
Like, and there's an example. He didn't necessarily say it with the degree of like equanimity and poise, but it did get conveyed to me.
Yeah.
And his anger was a protected, I can analyze this retroactively. He
Right.
got really angry at first, and then the vulnerability came out as we processed it. And his anger makes sense. I get angry sometimes, a lot, when my vulnerability is like poked at or not handled with care.
Right.
And this is a beautiful example of where, again, we get to de-shamify those experiences, by which I mean we don't make ourselves or our partner into a horrible monster because they acted in these ways. We actually say, oh, there's something that needs tending here. Oh,
Right.
there's an opportunity for some growth, some healing, some skill building. And when we are committed to that, and we will keep finding our way to it with guidance. Very few of us are going to do this on our own. I sure
Right.
did. I imagine you didn't,
Right.
like, so we deserve to be supported on these journeys.
So speaking of that, where can people find you? What do you want to mention that you've got available that listeners might want to
Oh, well,
seek out?
come and find me on Instagram, which once upon a time kicked me off their platform, but I decided to come back again. Um, I know it's such salacious conversations that we have.
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube. My website is darshanaavila.com, and that really is the best hub for it all. Get on my newsletter, learn about my private practice. I have the very, very good fortune of clients who work with me from different parts of the world, different parts of the country will fly to do like immersive work with me. So there's a lot of opportunities, and I absolutely love to hear from folks who are like, I heard this, that, and the other podcast interview. Like, tell me where you got connected, and tell me what questions you have, and we can always see about opportunities for me to be the one to guide you if that's what you're looking for.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessa. Great conversation.